You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.
And I do welcome you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Tonight I have with me Radiant Creators, Craig Simpson. You know this is going to be an incredible show full of light, happiness, and possibility as we see, well, what do you think's in the news feed this week and last week and the week before that, and still building and building. So let's talk about what kind of seeds you want to plant for microgreens so you can get your garden started during this time so you have a fresh food supply. Think about how many people would be happy and grateful that you're growing food when they forgot to. Imagine that. Blessings all around us. Everywhere you look, there's opportunities. So moving through this show this evening, I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the anomalies happening in our atmosphere. Incredible double tornadoes in Morocco. A cyclone over Egypt. Double cyclones approaching Australia. And where we look, the locust plague is just becoming more of a full-on biblical event here, for a better description. But beyond that, what else do you see occurring on our planet in terms of technological innovations? We start to see more rumblings of Nikola Tesla inventions being released. Wow, free power at last. I wonder why they're deciding to do it right at this second to talk about wireless energy and also electrogravitics at the same time, weightlessness. When we're ready to having trucking disruptions, supply chain disruptions, now they're talking about autonomous vehicle deliveries, drone deliveries. And you just wonder how advanced is this tech and what we're seeing in the public eye right now, like Boston Dynamics with the robots they show you on these great videos on YouTube, which I'm enthralled by the way. But really, how advanced are those robots? The military applications, Greg, maybe you could attest to this, but how many years do you think in advance what we see out here in the public, and then how far advanced do you think they are in the military for these applications? But these are some of the ideas we want to talk about tonight. You can get enough of the coronavirus stuff on the news. You've seen it. You talk about it. It is going to intertwine with a few of these ideas with the grand solar minimum food shortages, which would have been in your face next year anyway. The timelines that I put out years ago still stand. Global awareness of our food not being enough happens next year. It seems like this is an opportunity for global leaders to lock down the food supply, the food chain, all the way from the fields to the supermarkets. So we're going to talk about all these things in between. Craig, thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure to be here tonight. And yeah, well, we definitely have heard plenty of the corona stuff, so we don't need to even mention that, really, although, of course, it'll show up. But it does feel like we're getting a early preview of things to come. It seems like 2030 got here a little faster than we'd expected, or at least, like I say, we're having a preview of it. So it gives people that opportunity to see a store that is empty. And something that shocked me this week, which was just yesterday I saw it, went to, well, we're preppers here, so we're a bit ready already, but we wanted to, go to stores to get some fresh produce and such, and we were going to Walmart, and what shocked me was, yeah, of course, there's no water, there's no this or that. I mean, very, very empty, same as Costco and a lot of supermarkets. But what got me went over to that forgotten section of the store where the shoe polish and the shoelaces are. And that really shocked me because they were out of shoelaces. And anybody who, buys shoelaces once in a while, I know a lot of people don't. It's kind of outdated maybe for a lot of people. That section with the shoe polish and the shoelaces is often kind of dusty, forgotten, off in the back of the store. But to see it ransacked, really no shoe polish, and completely out of laces, that somehow made the current reality very real for me, because I thought to myself, this is cunning, this is planning, this is people who know what they're doing, because just running out of toilet paper and water and chicken, I mean, of course that's going to happen, but shoelaces, I think that humanity's intuition recently has clicked on. I can reference other things that lead me to believe that, but that was a big one. The shoelaces, I realized there's people out there that are their instincts have turned back on. They're thinking.
Yeah, I would agree. But what the instincts I'm not seeing in some of the same stores, because we went to Walmart too. And for those of you out there on my Patreon channel, I'm trying to go through a different set of stores every couple days to just photograph the changes. From 2 weeks ago where you saw like one little hole, you're like, uh-oh, it's starting. And now until they're like, there's a strip bare. One thing I noticed in the Walmart world over there was the whole Pop-Tarts aisle was empty and all the, like junk food was all gone. And then we walked by the frozen food section with the broccoli florets and the collard greens that were frozen and what else? The Brussels sprouts and that kind of totally full. I was shocked. So even if you think the store might be out of food, it might be out of food for some, but think about the average person who's shopping in these stores and what might be available on the inverse in some of these stores as well. Because I found a couple cans of powdered goat milk. They were $12 a can. But that purchase point price there in Walmart was a little too high for people to pay for a little time. Well, I wouldn't say tiny, but a small can of powdered goat milk. So even if you're going, the price point on some of these objects here that you could still find in the store. So for me, I was looking for canned coffee specifically in cans and then powdered milk specifically in cans. Hard to find, but I was so stoked when I found the goat milk. But it was expensive. It was a small can.
Yeah, if you look around a little bit, you might find things that other people aren't looking for. That's the trick. If people are still out there shopping for things, just go to different stores and look around, because I think that we found canned coffee. We've been stocking up on that, and actually Cafe Altura, you can still get it on Amazon. It's good, but we can get it at stores local here, and like you mentioned, in goat milk and such. Yeah, it's amazing how all the junk food has disappeared. The cereal aisles were empty there we saw in Walmart, and we were thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder how many, that might actually be a ton, literally like one whole ton or two of sugar has actually left the store, So it's neat, but I would say that, locally here at least, rice and beans were gone too. So it's really across the board.
Yeah, and another thing I found, this was even in a Kroger, which is in more of a nice part of town up here. Like you say, the rice and beans, everything was gone, but the couple bags of amaranth were still on the shelf, and then one bag of spelt. And I thought, oh man, look at that little nugget. Look at those nuggets laying right on the shelf there. Nobody wanted the amaranth. I'll take it. Plus, you can sprout it. Amaranth, if you didn't know that, there's a lot of things in the store you can buy as food, but that also you can turn it into microgreens or grow it in your garden. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a seed supply, and then at the same time, you're getting food. So, when I'm going in there, I'm surveying it like multi-purpose use types of things. Like canning lids is another one. If you can find canning lids, just from my own personal opinion, you probably want to grab whatever you see off the shelf, because when we went through, we found 3 stores didn't have any more canning. They did have the jars and whatnot, but they're totally out now. There was only Kroger was one of the places that surprisingly had canning lids left. All the canning lids are going, all the mason jars are going. So you can see people more on the more pioneering lifestyle, grandma understanding how to can stuff edge, buying up all that stuff. Because in the beginning it wasn't, but now it is for sure starting to, like your shoelaces. If you see the shoelaces are gone and you see all the canning jars are gone and all the candles are gone, something's up.
Yeah, people are thinking about what they're buying, and also something this last couple days is you can feel it in the air. I mean, we call it the psychic weather here, but you can feel that there's something heavy going on. And now, of course, we can get into the never-ending discussion of, is it, a bioweapon, is it natural, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's definitely is it as bad as it's reported, et cetera, et cetera. But, regardless of any of that, definitely, it seems like people are aware, they're freaked out. And it's the first time I've ever really felt it in the air. There was the whole 9/11 back in the day, and you could feel people were upset then. But really, I'm feeling a real heaviness in the air. And one thing that gets me is, when you go to the stores, you can see people are shell shocked. And that really was something for us because you've got your old people who, they can't get potatoes and they're, wandering around like they're looking for the things they usually get and they can't get them, and it's hard for them to get around. And so you can still see the elderly already starting to suffer, not being able to get what they usually do, and hopefully being able to get like crackers and sardines or something else. They'll get by. Thank heavens, it's really nice that they're having, opening like an hour earlier, or the first hour we're seeing here in stores around here for the elderly, which I think is awesome. Get the place stocked up, cleaned up, and they get a chance to get things. So that's awesome. But along with that, we also see the millennials are having a hard time. It's funny. It's like the boomer generation and the millennials seem to be having the hardest time with this. Maybe it's the first disaster for a lot of young millennials especially, but something that we're seeing already. Along with people notice, and let me know if you notice that people, they just look shell-shocked. But along with that, we're seeing who people are. Already it's coming out. The beautiful nature in our community, people are talking. They're talking in the long lines, waiting. They're helping each other. So people are giving that old guy potatoes, saying, "Oh, just take mine, whatever. I'll get by." And we're also seeing the worst in people. That's already happening. So people are shell shocked, and at the same time, we're seeing angels come out of people. Beautiful, beautiful things I'm seeing, and then also the worst I'm seeing already.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of both, and you talked about the energy in the air. Now, is it another step down in the electromagnetic activity from the sun coupled with 5G because they're turning on all these 5G networks everywhere? So there's literally a different frequency in the air. And literally that is what it is in the description of the vibration frequency and wave frequencies in the air that you're actually surrounded by. Changes from the sun electromagnetically, coupled with the new turning on of many 5G networks in many places across the US, Europe, and different areas, if you're there listening to us in Canada. And then you have the electromagnetic antenna from the human as well broadcasting into this whole sphere. So how many types of electromagnetic waves are interfering with each other beyond what we had with the regular routers in our house and the regular cell towers and all that electromagnetic garbage that was interfering with everything anyway? But now we're adding other layers on top of layers. So if you were to strip that away again, really what kind of feeling would you have in the air? Because a lot of these things happening is right in tune with the timeline of this grand solar minimum realization of the cosmic awareness, or just this river of knowledge that we can tap into, and it becomes a global consciousness kind of thing. They call it a 100th monkey for a better term of experiments in a laboratory under controlled conditions. But once enough people become aware, enough of a species become aware, the entire species becomes aware. So I don't know if we're just intuitively and instinctively rolling up to this area right now where the sun is doing its churning and morphing and changing frequency, which also would have effects in the hemispheres of our brain doing the same thing. So we'd perceive reality differently, and a lot of changes are suddenly happening with the sun because it's supposed to step down again as we get in, because Jupiter's starting to swing wide of our Earth here, and then electromagnetically all the four gas giants with their gravity, they're pulling on us now. So there's a lot of celestial increases in what would be normal over, because this type of cycle that we're coming into with just a planetary geometry, we haven't seen since the late Antique Little Ice Age in, say, 535 AD. So we're coming up again where these gas giants are lining up in a perfect square with the Earth in the middle. But Jupiter's just swung past us to bring us up into, and as we go through 21, 22, 23, we're going to get into that ultimate lineup in October of 2024. So each year now, successively, it's going to get more gravitationally and electromagnetically intense. Plus, the sun is doing its thing with its step down in charge. And at the same time, we have all these new frequency patterns from new electronics on our planet and new broadcasting devices. So obviously, the human's going to be, we're all feeling it. Everybody feels something strange. So which is which, and which, can we really dissect it into, well, it's 1/3 that causation, another third that causation. It's really strange how all these things are completely overlapping like a tidal wave at this time.
Well, we are little scalar antennas, just like a pyramid. So we are these, cosmic transceivers, and so we do definitely feel. I mean, we are interactive with our energy, interactive with the energy of the Earth. So we know when things are going on. It's just that, humans don't necessarily, a lot of us don't have our instincts turned on as much as we need to feel those things. It's kind of like how your dog knows half an hour before you get home and starts waiting by the door. They're just tuned into the energy. So something I notice about people feeling shell shocked and with what you're saying is right now there's less noise. A lot of people are not working. People are traveling around less. I look in our neighborhood here, definitely less cars. A lot of the restaurants are, you have to go and pick things up. And we keep getting kind of more on quarantine. Quarantine keeps getting deeper in some areas more than others. But here, definitely, traffic is down 50%. I mean, there's less people out there, less going on, more people who are working at home, etc. So it's quieter. Those roads are open. To me, I just feel like the noise has been turned down. And with the noise turned down, we begin to feel more because our perception is not so hindered. And so that could be part of it. It's gotten quieter. And then also, now, uh, some of the Q people, I'll call them, the people who are into the Q stuff. I'm not, but there's been a lot of like rumbling there saying that now is when they're implementing 5G during this time. A lot of them truly, with all their heart and souls, they believe that. So, is 5G being rolled out a lot right now, and we haven't been told? Could it be? Could be. People would feel that for sure. Like I say, the Q crowd do believe that wholeheartedly. And then, of course, we do have a lot of, if one follows someone we talked about before, like Joni Patri, there's many astrologers out there. She's a Vedic astrologer. And right now, especially the 22nd and the 23rd coming up, we are looking at a lot of astrology, which is very, very powerful, affecting us. So we have a lot of planets that are in conflict, and it would not be surprising that we're following it. So there's just so much going on right now. And definitely, that's one thing about it's something that Ben Davidson said quite a while ago, that little changes are going to be big. So as in, you have a solar flare that usually would be nothing, but now it's going to really affect the Earth. And it's kind of hard to measure these things. So it is hard to measure how our ionosphere is lessening because the sun is lessening, because it's going into its minimum. How do you really quantify that? Is it down 10% more? How many cosmic rays are getting in? How does that affect the Schumann radiance? So really, we are in uncharted territory there too, because we haven't lived through it before. So does it happen in quick increments that are very great, or is it gradual, or does that vary? You know what I mean? So right now, I think this is a great time for humans to spend time in nature, for sure. Get in shape, exercise, eat well, purify your body. And your mind, body, mind, and spirit, because we are on our own in some ways. We have our community like we're speaking to here, but we need to be our own transceivers with the universe, that our intuition can guide us through this time. What do you think of that?
Cosmic rays are up 12%. I just saw a post on, it was either strange sounds or electroverse. But the cosmic rays, yeah, up 12% since 2017. So looking at something like that. And, another thing, blocking out the noise. I saw Netflix today was going to reduce bandwidth traffic 25% to Europe because with so many more people working at home, they were finding you can't have both. You can't, because streaming services is the number one user of bandwidth across the internet. So with Netflix being such a gigantic portion of that, they're starting to roll back bandwidth service and availability because people are going to work from home. And remember, they've already said that, expect delays and whatever. The other day, our internet wasn't working very well. So I don't know if that was just everybody jumped on and they were still trying to stream everything and there was just too much pull on it. But expect basic services to start rolling back like that too. I mean, it's great to sit home. You can watch YouTube vids and whatever. But in terms of a company coming back to help the internet flow more smoothly And I tell you what, getting my groove on every night here to get out to the garden right around sunset and enjoy that hour or 2 hours to wind down my day. I really, really, really like it. Getting the hands in the dirt, listening to everything is quieter. I'll tell you, there's way less traffic here too. I can concur on that. And then just watching the sunset and getting that golden hour, putting some seeds in the ground, and time just goes so effortlessly, and you can, I don't know, the time just disappears while you're out working in the garden, and you have something to show for it as well. So at the end of the day, end of the week, so all those seeds that I put in last week are starting to come up already into microgreens. So we can harvest those and eat them after 7 to 10 days, or we can let them go longer into plants themselves. Like, well, we don't have to harvest everything now. Harvest what you need and let it grow the next day. So there's continuous, and if you plant it in batches, and it's just fun to kind of work things out in your mind where you want to put them on which kind of schedule, and then watch things come up, and allow nature. Because I saw the squirrels checking out our beds the other day, and I was like, all right, you guys are welcome for now, but you could be in the dinner pot later, But anyway, bring on the wild game.
Yeah, well, we might be having a little bit of luck, because I think that this is a great time for people who are GSM minded and who've been, prepping for that as it is, to basically have to practice to some extent. I mean, I'll admit I'm somewhat optimistic, where I think that we will see, well, yeah, quarantines and hassle, etc., like that. And it's definitely not going to be good for the economy. It already hasn't been. But with that said, I do think this will come and this will go. That's just my optimistic view at the moment. But what's beneficial is we get some training, because a lot of times people, they prep, they have their hydroponics, or they have their hydroponics kit, or they have the stuff to microgreen. They think, they're gonna plant on some of the soil that they have outside, but they're not doing it. And as you know, one thing we definitely have talked about in the past is you gotta do it. And this is a great time for all of us preppers, all of us people aware of the GSM, to start prepping, find out what doesn't work, find out what works, because we're not new to hydroponicking over here, but it's been a couple year journey to really get hydroponics that work, and to know when to plant things, when things work, how big to let them get, when do things get woody, when do the roots grow too much and clog the pipes, microgreens, what grows, because the seed is a little machine that needs the perfect environment to do what it's supposed to do. And so you can plant your seeds, but if it's not time for them to grow, they won't. And so, like right now, mustard greens for us going crazy, arugula going crazy, black seed and Simpson, it's going crazy. Spinach grows just fine. Kale, it's rocking in the hydroponics. From microgreens, broccoli sprouts, they're just losing their minds. We can get those in just a couple days. Say we have a couple trays growing. So, and then also, living out of our cupboards a little bit is a good thing, because we don't always do that. Where right now, it's just nice not to go to the stores, because it's kind of crazy, and to be honest with you, it's kind of sad. So it's nice just to stay out of the mess right now and just, stick with the plan, So what do you think of that? Do you think this is a great time to be training? Like, hey, this is it. You got to do something. You got to break into those stores a little bit. You got to hydroponic. You got to kind of put foot to your prayers right now. But at least this, I believe, is not the disaster that we will have in the future. This is training opportunity.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody listening right now to turn off the lights in your house and see if you can go find a candle or a flashlight in an instant. Like, your power just turns out right now. Do you know where anything is in your house where you can actually go, at least strike a match, get a lighter onto a candle so you can have some light? And then again, you with your hydroponics unit, put a candle at the far end of the room at nighttime, and then try to work on that at night and see how much light you have with a single candle at the far end of the room, or even in another room, because you got to think about it. Moving forward, how many people bought candles for this type of situation? What if you only have, let's say, 10 candles, or you're not going to be burning them indefinitely? You're going to use them when you have it strategically. And think about the strategic placement of things so you have light at night. Try to think about working without light from a light bulb for a minute there, and see how far you can get in your day. And I encourage you to do that emergency thing. Just turn off all your lights and then go see if you can find something in the dark If you have anything, like, do you know where you keep, like, just for this very situation, like it's always in the left side of this top drawer right over here. I know I could stumble to it. I know exactly where it is. And then I could just click the lighter and I finally got a candle, but a lot of people don't. So I would say, they're expecting a power outage during this time for sure. Unequivocally, your power is going to go out at least once during this event. I don't know why, but I've been told by two different people that are unrelated that seemingly strange things. Hey, get ready. There's going to be a power outage. Okay. And then another person a couple of days later, are you prepared for a power outage for a little bit of time? It's just going to suddenly go out. Are you ready? So I would, impart the same to you. How ready are you for things to break down and be DIY during this time? Because if things are breaking down and around your house, if you're going to be stuck in there for a fair bit, you can't just run out to the store to go get another screw or go get another bolt or whatever that breaks. We're so used to that today, just relying on the supply chain for anything that ever breaks and fixes. Like you said, shoelaces. I've seen kids today throw away a perfectly good pair of shoes instead of buying a pair of shoelaces because they'll just get another pair of shoes that has shoelaces in them. Like, this is the kind of mind frame that exists right now in our current reality. So think about when you were, if you're over 40 or whatever, when you were kids, you used to repair stuff and just kind of take things apart and DIY things and have fun breaking. Your parents would throw away the old washer and they let you take it apart first before it went out to get taken away. Like, nobody does that anymore. I rarely see anybody letting their kids take an old washer apart, an old dishwasher, an old oven, an old whatever before it gets taken away. The repair people come in, the installers come in, and whoosh, it's away it goes in like 30 seconds, and kids never see it. So to be able to shock yourself and cut yourself and do all kind of stuff so you could really learn how to repair things safely, that world is long gone. And how do you even structurally build something, a support, a piece of wood? People barely even know how to nail nails anymore. I mean, screws, it's just a whole world that if you're over 40, you grew up in an entirely different time where these kids today most of them, I'm not going to say all, but I'm going to say a great majority don't have the basic skill sets to even pick up a screwdriver and put a screw in the wall, So when it comes to a power outage, and how many people, I'll go back to it. Are you ready for a power outage? And do you know where your emergency stuff is to at least get you some light to get you to the next step?
Yes, and there is something to be said for that, to have flashlights and your lanterns and radio, that's got batteries in it, or it, charges by the window every day. To have those things and keep them where they're supposed to be, because, we're guilty of that here for sure. We move the flashlights, and we're not supposed to, but we do it sometimes.
You're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the choir,
But that's true. If the lights go out, you want to know where they are. So definitely it is a really good discipline it's good for you. Keep your flashlights where they're supposed to be. Darn it. You know what I mean? Because not only will you find them when lights go out, but you will frustrate yourself a lot less. Well, you mentioned that Netflix cutting traffic, their streaming, I think it was like down 25%, throttle their traffic. Well, that's one of the things that I seem to be constantly aware of right now as I watch the world is, here's my thought. As cities and eventually states, because I think it just happened in California, I think they had like a statewide shelter-in-place thing just recently, this evening. I think the whole state was told to by the governor. I'd have to double-check that. I literally just heard it before we started talking. So I haven't confirmed that. But as cities and eventually states close all non-essential businesses, what government dictates essential and not essential is going to start showing a plan and a lot of bias. And that's one of the things that I'm noting is now we're getting into the politics of what is essential and what is not essential, and what the government can tell you to do and what it cannot. Can it tell you to close businesses, et cetera? Because here in Arizona, we have the Arizona Defense League, which is already pushing back against that, saying, wait a second, it's not actually constitutional that you tell us that we can't have businesses open. You know what I mean? So we're already getting into a clash between citizens and states already. And there's a lot of bias going on too. Like in San Jose, I believe the mayor of San Jose decided that gun stores are not essential and have to be closed. You can see we are already starting to see, I believe if they push this too hard, the beginning of civil unrest right there at the state level, because is it constitutional? Can they do it? And especially you start getting into a matter of opinion that governments have. I mean, let's face it, on the more left side of the country and left-leaning cities, we've already got in more than one pushes to say that gun stores are not essential and that they can't be open because now we're on lockdown. So, I mean, this is a crazy time. I mean, how do you feel about, do you think that we're already going to start seeing some civil unrest this early in the game?
Well, I take a look at, the national level and then also states' rights. And if you look back, states actually supersede the national level on certain mandates and laws and writs. And if you go back in, so earlier, everybody was like, no, you national government, you can't do, or you're the opposite, like national government says you have to do this. Washington said this, every state has to do it. And now it's back to, oh no, now it's the states' rights, So they're just playing it so conveniently on whatever side of the tennis court the ball's laying on that behooves them to get the best result, right? If they don't like a thing, nationalism again, nothing from Washington. And then suddenly like, we need the mandate from Washington. Everybody has to adhere to it. Or, before that wasn't about the states, and now it's like, oh no, we need to have the states. See, states, usurp the national government because the states' rights. So again, you get into this whole everybody's playing the card for their best benefit. And again, it's all political. And look with the food. Now, you've already seen, at least I have seen 2 different instances. Well, every store where we went just these last 2 days has police officers in the store now. Hadn't seen that before. Anywhere they're selling food, there's police in there. Sheriff, I'll tell you, there's a breakdown. Sheriff's deputies are in the Sam's Club and the Costco. Other stores have just regular patrol police in them. At least 1 to 2 squad cars out, depending on the size of the store. And at least 1 to 2 uniformed officers in the area, and they are armed with their vests on inside these stores. So at the same time, I was also seeing talk about the National Guard escorting food delivery trucks down the highways and ensuring that they get to their destination using staging spots, mainly these. And you saw it before, just like Event 201, they were talking about the public-private partnership with the government. And here we are now. CVS is partnering with the government, Walmart's partnering. So you can expect these areas and parking lots to become not only staging areas, but delivery spots overseen by National Guard. So expect to see troops moving into your local area. Now, if I was a National Guard guy or girl tasked with manning a check post in the middle of Arizona or Texas or Tennessee or Alabama or somewhere like this by themselves at the end of a road going, all right, well, we're like from New York and they just dropped us in here and there's 2 of us and we're supposed to keep all these people at bay, and that's not going to work. But eventually, if it gets too crazy, is my personal opinion, like you can agree with this or whatever you think or disagree too. If it gets too crazy and the amount of fatalities gets too high, they're going to actually do some really rounding up if you're breaking quarantine. And just like in a wartime situation, Craig, maybe you can attest, the easiest targets are the ones that are spotted first, that are popping out, showing their positions. So if they're coming around, and not a soft lockdown like in California or other places we're seeing, but like a super hard pipe hitting lockdown like in Wuhan, you stick your head out the window, you get dragged away into a quarantine camp by force with a stun gun and nets around the neck, 16 police officers with batons beating you to get you to the ground. This kind of roughness to get you to a quarantine camp. If it comes to that in the United States, you're going to want to lay low as can be to let all the idiots that are going to go, you can't do that to me. I'm an American. I can do what I want. Well, things are about to change in the liberties you have. And as much as I don't like that, just understand that until everybody says no, it's going to continue. So the roundup may or may not take place to that level that it went on in China. It depends on how massive this outbreak is, or maybe it's not going to get that. And maybe people will take care, because I talked to a couple friends in New Zealand tonight, and they're like, you know what? Here in New Zealand, the government put the order out and everybody's staying inside and everybody's helping each other. and everybody's helping the old people, and they're setting up neighborhood groups so people make phone calls every night and check on the elderly in their neighborhoods. And if they don't have, the neighbors are going and dropping stuff at the front doors and making sure the older neighbors are taken care of. And if they get sick, it's like a full community progress where communities are taking care of their own within the community. And New Zealanders are all about that, saying, yeah, we'll help, we'll stay in, cool, we'll let this thing ride it out, everybody help each other. But this cavalier Wild West John Wayne attitude here in the States is a bit different than anywhere else in the world. So I don't know about sticking your head out and being a target first. What do you think about that? Because you've already had some of those experiences. I mean, what are you going to see if people are going to really push it and like go up to roadblocks on purpose to cause trouble? Because there's a certain segment of population that's just going to be angry and they don't care, and they're just going to push it, and they're just going to drive up to the roadblocks to cause problems just on purpose because they can. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, I think what we would see, and I could just base this on my experiences in Somalia. I was there for 4 months after Delta Force got out, or actually while they were getting out is when we showed up, and we kind of secured things for 4 months. And so saw wasn't really a first world country, but it definitely was Stone Age, in the matter of a couple days. So you've got your old people who are disoriented, and they kind of live on muscle memory. Every day they go to, their local diner and they eat and stuff like that. And so they tend to drive into roadblocks because they don't know what's going on. They're old and disoriented and they kind of panic. Then you do have the people who, what we kind of would consider like our gangsters here in America, people who want to be a pain in the ass, who want to test the cops and stuff like that. And, when the situation is tense enough, they usually get shot pretty quick and then they're done. And so ultimately, things clean up pretty fast. And then you've got a situation where really, I think we're already seeing it here in Arizona, is where you see the best and the worst in people. And honestly, the more lawless the situation becomes, the more difficult it becomes, the more all the good people become the network and run the show. And the bad people, who really, there aren't that many, but they either get removed from the planet or they just stop being a pain in the ass, if nothing else. And so really, in bad situations, society does have a natural instinct to take care of itself. It really does. And I think that it's tough because, I would not want to be the National Guard person. I would not want to be like who would be more accepted than the National Guard, honestly, would be a well-regulated militia, which we do have here in Arizona. If people felt that their citizens, their militia were the ones who were doing some intervention like roadblocks and ensuring curfews if that kind of stuff happened, and keeping people off the streets except for essential business, I would say one thing that states could do is, if you have a militia, for heaven's sakes, use it, because your citizens will be much more willing to deal with that, I think, than National Guard. And I also think, for God's sakes, don't send UN troops, because I'll be out there fighting them. All right, that's not going to work one bit. So, yeah. Well, I mean, we do have, like I say, the impact of the coronavirus will be temporary, I think. I mean, it's going to last however how long it lasts. It's going to come and it's going to go. But, I think what many people are aware of is that the measures that get put in place while it's happening are not going to go away. This is a chance for another Patriot Act, basically. This is it's a chance for another NDAA. I mean, we really are in the midst of an important and critical, I think, political time. And so I have a feeling that, how would I put it? I have no idea how this is going to shake out politically, and as far as quarantines and cities and states being on lockdown. I really, don't have a feel for it, other than I think we'll see the good people win, basically, and hopefully the militias take care of things more than the National Guard. And a lot of it comes down to, I think, also how much people believe this. Do you know what I mean? If people believe that there is a virus that's going to get them, if it turns out to be true and people do believe it, then they're going to be very pliable. But I think one of the things is if people don't believe it, that's when it's going to be, harder to implement, barbaric tactics, which you can in other countries easier than here. But also, like I say, I'm already seeing people here at this state level in Arizona already ramp up legally and push back against the state government, because that's where a huge important fight is, because I think everybody's aware, state level and national level, that governments use these opportunities for crap like the Patriot Act, for things like the NDAA. We know this, and we know they'll try it again. And so, this fight right now, this situation is truly on many levels. I mean, what do you think of that?
I would give a little bit of information that I was forwarded. When there is a full-on travel restriction to California, the rest of the country will have the exact same, I said, restrictions within 72 hours. Now, when I was told this, they said, I don't exactly know which day it's going to start, but look for the event timeline, not like a specific date. So when you just mentioned that, most of California or all of it now has mentioned shelter in place, I would just think that the next step would be a full-on travel ban to California, and that would include, it has to include motor. Now, it just doesn't include air. It has to include motorways blocked as well, coming over from anywhere out of California, land bound, often interstate coming over the mountain ranges, and air travel as well. Once you see both of those, as in a travel ban to California, occur, it's going to be for the entire United States about 48 to 72 hours after that. So use that as the key indicator as to what's happening. So it seems that it's sort of drifting that way. It's not there yet, but it seems to be drifting. Because look how fast that occurred this morning. It was just, what was it, San Francisco that had that, shelter in place. Now it's the whole state. Well, that was only 12 hours difference. So you can see how things are moving. But people are really going to be pushing, because we saw in Tennessee with the couple of taverns and cafes in Nashville that did the exact same thing. They're like, whoa, hold on a second. You, the mayor, can't dictate to our businesses what can go on or not go on in the city in terms of being able to stay open. They were pushing the same exact thing. That was that Kid Rock Cafe in Tennessee. So you're starting to see more and more. And as more of these kind of pushbacks come, you're going to see more. It's going to snowball too, where, other business owners will say, well, in Tennessee and in Arizona and, in Texas, and, they're doing wait a second. Like, what gives you the authority to close my business? And then they'll try to come out with the whole guilt trip, like, well, you're putting people in danger by having more people come. And look, there's 10 people buying your stuff, and there's a crowd in your place. And it's going to be a bit, I don't know where we're going to go with it, really. But Craig, I forgot the question you'd ask me. I had a couple thoughts. I don't have my paper with me tonight. Usually I write stuff down so I can, go off point by point after I listen to what you said. But I was just trying to remember it all. I actually forgot what you were going to ask me at the end there. But anyway, continue. Forget my babbling and rabbling.
Oh, no, it's fine. I actually asked far too many things in one question. And I think it's like basically at the state level, we do see that people are pushing back already. They're saying, you have to define the laws. That's one thing here in Arizona that we're seeing, is that you can't just say that you have, emergency powers and the city of Scottsdale or the city of Phoenix has to do this or this. And the citizens are kind of like here's the Arizona Defense League mainly pushing, saying, which has a lot of members here in the state, saying, wait a second, you have to define. The laws have to be written. They're not written. You have to define. You have to have laws. You can't just say that we're in lockdown. Well, what does that mean? Who enforces that? You know what I mean? And so states haven't done this before. So in a lot of cases, there's no law for it. So if you look at what's happening in San Francisco, I do believe that the mayor asked them to shelter in place, but can the mayor tell them? And now at a state level, in California, whole different story. What authority does the government have? So already we're seeing a, political battle. And you're right, there is the guilt. Oh, if you don't close your business, if you go outside, then, the coronavirus wins, whatever. So you're going to see that. But then also, like I say, we do know very well that at the federal level, the laws that they push will not go away. what they do now. And then also many of us are not so jazzed about the vaccination. As in if they're working on a vaccine and they're fast tracking it, a lot of us who are, proud anti-vaxxers are more just like we're anti-totalitarianism. We want to have a choice about what we do to our bodies. I'm not jazzed. It's so funny they keep talking about, oh, the vaccine, we're working on it. I'm like, oh my God. So it seems like there's those people who are just ready to do whatever they're told. Then there's people, I think like you and I would say, who and many others who are listening, who are going, oh God, state level, what are they doing? Federal level, what are they doing? Oh God. And then like the medical industrial complex, what are they plotting now? And I think a lot of people, and how do you feel about this? Because I'm feeling a lot of people are really worried. They're going, I don't want any forced vaccination nonsense. And this just seems like the perfect setup for it.
Well, what I don't like is they're trying to tie it into ID 2020, where if I made the mistake of not going when I first returned back to the States after being in Asia. I left a month early seeing this whole thing. I'm living at 2.0 here. I've done a couple of previous interviews when I first got back, and I was up in the cabin. I spent, 3 weeks in a cabin by myself, self-quarantining when I first got back to the States. And it was like, yeah, I bought myself, 3 weeks of time before this thing rolls into the States. And at that time, they're like, yeah, whatever. It's America. It's over there. It's never coming here. And now it's here, and we're seeing all the stuff. But the whole ID 20, I should have gotten my license and done everything for the new ID to get the star on your driver's license. Because if you're going to do that now, they're going to require a vaccination authentication card to do that. So you're going to have to intertwine these. So now, if you don't have a passport, you're going to be required to get a driver's license. You're going to have to upgrade it, let's say, to this new ID 2020. Now, that's going to require an injection for you to get that. So if you don't have a passport, it'd probably be better for you to get a passport than try to do all the hoops with this ID 2020 program, because I can just go to an airport and throw my passport down. I don't have to worry about any of the whole driver's license nonsense at all. But this whole thing about not being able to travel by air unless you're vaccinated, this is a UN agenda. So it doesn't matter if the ID 2020 program is rolling out in the States, where if you want to get the star on your driver's license so you can use that to travel internally in the United States, you have to get a vaccination to prove that you're vaccinated. So you, low life somewhere in XYZ state, don't transmit it to another place, serf. They're trying to say, well, we need to vaccinate the serfs because they're so dirty. So this person over here can't travel over there because they're too dirty, these serfs. And that's the way they want to do it. ID 2020 ID card, I tell you, see, everything's closing down now, but when it reopens, you're going to have to get a vaccination certificate to get that star on your driver's license, unless you already have a current passport. Now, see, after that passport runs out, I don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully you got a passport recently where you still have 10 years before you need to go through this rigmarole. But the UN rolling out, you can't fly internationally without the whole vaccination card. And it has to be digital. So I'm sure there's going to be some crazy stuff in that vaccine with chips and all this stuff that everybody's been talking about for ages that's going to roll in your body whether you want it or not. So this is where it leaves me, is I am not a fan of being forced to put anything in my body at all. Because you didn't tell me they're using fetus in the current vaccinations. You don't even know what's inside the rest of the vaccine. You don't know what's in there. I mean, you look at the chemical constituents inside of these vaccines, and it just makes you shock and awe. Like, whoa, what is in this stuff here? Squalene, human fetus. I mean, what else are they going to put? Pig fetus. They have all these kind of RNA strands from different kind of animals that's inside there. Not a fan. Seriously, not a fan. Unacceptable. And, being an adult human on the planet here, we're supposed to have all these inalienable rights given to us by God, and then we're told that we have to take a vaccination to get on an airplane. And this is coming. This is the problem, though, with all this stuff. I mean, yeah, they're trying to scare everybody, but it's more than that. This whole thing, I don't know how much of it's smoke and mirrors and fake fear through the media versus how much of it is this grand solar minimum crop losses where we're not going to have enough food to feed the planet next year, because this year's planting is dismal with a capital LLL at the end of that, compared to last year's planting. And China didn't plant. They missed their entire rice planting in the southern part of China. It's warm enough now there to plant rice. They missed their entire planning because everybody's been on lockdown. And Australia's at the lowest harvest ever recorded for the country, even below the 1980s level when the mega drought in the 1980s took place in Australia that whacked their yields to nothing. They're below that. So as we march forward into these next couple of years, there's not going to be enough food to feed the planet. So we just started lumping all these things on top of it. So what is it really? Is it the fear factor from the virus? Is it the UN and all these governments know that, hey, with this grand solar minimum, we've been pushing global warming for how many years? We can't really tell the people the truth because they're going to be so angry at the governments if they find out. Oh, the virus crashed the economy. Oh, it wasn't the repo market and all this quantitative easing across the planet, everybody putting numbers on top of fake numbers on top of screens. No, it wasn't that. It was the virus, And now you have to be vaccinated before you can travel again. So what they're trying to do is make it you lock down in your country and you never travel out of your country as long as you live again, unless you get that vaccination. And this is the kind of game plan they're moving to here, which is really scary because that means they're trying to lock down the entire planet, which was part of the grand solar minimum food crop loss thing anyway. They didn't want everybody with their economic means to travel to different destinations like Indonesia, different climates warmer like Thailand, etc., because that would upset the balance. So the planet's being locked down. I don't know. I have to really firmly believe it has more to do with this grand solar minimum than it does have to do with the virus, because this grand solar minimum is a game changer. Go back in history and look at the Maunder minimum, the Sportman minimum, the Wolf minimum, late antique little ice age, Homeric minimum, and see how much massive devastation and change occurred during these times when they couldn't grow enough food for the planet. And you got to realize back then there was only like 750 million people on the planet. We got 8 billion people now. And Craig, I rambled too long.
Not at all, no. Well, the thing about the vaccinations and the ID, the UN ID 2020, the thing about that is I believe that youngsters, starting when they're babies, of course, do get, is it like 70 vaccinations by the time they're 21 or in their teens or something like that? So for me, anybody who has the notion that it's not some kind of a profit-driven racket, it just seems a little bit naive to me because, of course, some vaccinations have a value, I'd imagine, but I have a hard time believing that, humans are so frail that they have to have 70 vaccinations, by profit-driven companies, or else we die. It seems a little bit nutty. Humans have been on Earth a long time, before recent history, and we're still here. And ultimately, our hunter-gatherer ancestors, and we know from, archaeology basically, and looking at, DNA and looking at bones and honestly looking at fossilized poop. I mean, really, we used to be in better shape. We were stronger than we are now. So those 70 vaccinations are not doing us so well. How many are really valid and do any good? And so to me, I get very worried about the vaccination thing, as we could see it possibly evolve into here, because that is like the dream of the corporation to, work with the government like that and ensure that we are vaccinated, make it legal, demonize those who are not. You can't be off quarantine unless you're vaccinated. They would love that. Oh my heavens, it's kind of like forced vaccination 2.0, So yeah, you mentioned that this may have more to do with the GSM than anything else, and I think it's definitely on two levels. Like, you have the GSM, of course. This is a great way to hide everything. Everything is coronavirus. Everything that goes wrong. It's like you go outside and the roof of all the houses in the neighborhood's on fire and the paint's burned off the cars. I think there was a solar flare. No, it's coronavirus. You know what I mean? Like, everything can be blamed on that, but definitely the market too, because there's a lot going on in the market right now. Of course, we're looking at like one article from Zero Hedge was the median U.S. stock is now down 50% from its highs as the world loses 25 trillion in a month. Now, of course,
saw that one. That's insane.
Yes, and of course, that depends on how you look at it, of course, but the headline is accurate. I mean, they are down that much. Of course, for every seller, there's a buyer. Many were selling in profit, a lot of hedge funds and things like that, of course. But still, yes, money was lost. A lot of retail traders did lose money. And so you've got that going on, and that the GSM and the market, of course, are very tied together. And with the market, many have said that we kind of need a reset. And so you look at that and think, wow, coronavirus, perfect cover for all this stuff, because that's a huge dump in the market. And now you've got 500 billion twice. So $1 trillion a night in repo. With those repos, there's really no guarantee they'll ever be paid back.
And Craig, we need to take a break. The music's starting right now. So all of you Bitcoin truth seekers out there, we're going to come back the second hour. I'm your host, David DuByne, Mini Ice Age Conversations. Here with me tonight, Craig Simpson from Radiant Creators. We're going to take a 2-minute and 2-second break. And as I say, see you in 2 and 2. We'll be right back at the top of the hour here on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, listener supported, the largest listener supported streaming service on the planet. We'll be back in 2 minutes. See you then. And welcome back to the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne, creator of the Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube and also the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast series, as well as this radio program here on Revolution Radio, Studio A, every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. While you're listening tonight, there's so many things happening with our planet, and this is one of the last freedom of speech bastions to keep information flowing, as many other places are starting to censor either more or just completely cut off their communication. So being a listener-supported radio station, consider a donation to keep this platform on air. This is truly one of the last places that you're going to find information just like this available on the net. So many other venues and media, or so-called social quote-unquote media, are going to go down or completely restrict information before they allow the truth to escape. And this is one of the places where we can talk freely. Can you imagine Craig and I trying to have this conversation on YouTube? They would have cut us off for sure. Facebook Live, for sure, they cut off. We wouldn't even have been able to continue this far with our conversation. So consider a donation to the station to keep the running costs up. Everybody has running costs. It's a business. And right there, freedomslips.com, you'll see the donation tab right at the top there, drop-down menu, make a payment. You can do recurring or one-time payment. And with that said, let's continue the truth flow here. Now, Craig, I'm with Craig Simpson tonight from Radiant Creators. And also, Craig, if you have been following, he also has a Telegram channel. And I love the way he starts every time I listen. He's like, Bitcoin Truth Seekers. He also follows the markets, not only traditional. That's why he has so much information about the crash going on and where this thing might be moving into the meshing and melding of crypto with the special drawing rights off the IMF that's going to be unveiled as the new basket of currencies. So this will never happen again. We're going to need to equally weight every currency after it collapsed. The fiat's almost to nothing, but it'll never happen again because we have the SDR, and then we're going to get some gold-backed sliver of that in there and do a new currency reset along with the crypto and the SDR. And we're going to whip it into a basket and say, hey, welcome, new world, new monetary system. Thanks for playing, all of you old people. Your entire savings are wiped out. No more Social Security, and good luck. So, Craig, welcome back for the second hour. And tell us about your Telegram channel.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we don't actually have a Telegram channel, but we do have YouTube channel, of course, and we should have a Telegram channel. It'd be kind of cool to have a Radiant Creators Telegram channel, so maybe I'll just do that. But on YouTube, yeah, so there is Radiant Creators Show. We interview inspiring people to inspire others, like David DuByne. And also, I do every day, just about every day, I do this thing called the Bitcoin Daily View, because I do trade crypto for a living and some other things also, but I do trade crypto for a living. And since I need to look at the market every day, when I get up, I try to do a little overview, and it's basically just looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P, the Russell 2000, gold, maybe some world news, some market news, and then of course how Bitcoin is doing specifically. And sometimes we go into Ethereum, and I really try to keep it down to just a few minutes, so it's really, really fast, and people can get kind of a snapshot of the day. But this is definitely a good time to talk about crypto, because yeah, we have the trillion into the markets, the Fed's putting into the markets right now. And I mean, that's basic. And they also, they now they're doing something called the primary dealer credit facilities, which pretty much allows the Fed to put money into the financial institutions without uh, really any collateral. So it's a crazy time. I mean, I hardly understand the whole big picture very well when it comes to how that side of the market works. But yeah, about $1 trillion's going in every night, and it's being traded for crap. So pretty much, hey, primary dealers who are basically they're the ones lending to the retail banks and also the financial institutions, and they're kind of accepting really nothing as backing, nothing to guarantee the loan. They're just pumping money, and if I understand correctly from some of the things that I've read, we're going to up the debt an easy 10, some might say 20 billion before they're done, and that's going to ultimately just weaken the dollar that much more. And
Now, Craig,
so
is that 20 billion or trillion?
trillion, yeah, 20 trillion. So we're looking at up in the debt an easy 10 trillion by the time we're done the repo market as we're doing it right now. I mean, and I think actually I was looking at the numbers today, and I think if you just look at how much uh, the Fed is putting in, you look at the interest, etc., just doing some vague numbers. Yeah, we're looking at between like 10 and 20 trillion we're going to add to the debt, and that's just basically through what they call the primary dealer credit facility, and then they're working with the hedge funds, etc., financial institutions, some banks, and the primary dealer credit facility is just a way to kind of keep from having to have that pesky issue of collateral. It makes it easier for the Fed to buy the junk, basically. And it's a crazy time. I mean, it doesn't worry me because I guess I just don't get necessarily worried, but we are doing crazy stuff. So we do have, like we were saying earlier, the median U.S. stock is now down 50% from its highs as world loses 25 trillion in a month out of the markets. That's true. I know there's a lot of ways to look at that, but on paper, at least, that is true. A lot of wealth has been lost by the retail investor. The dollar is getting annihilized as we work to not have the economy crash, to keep that Dow Jones going up and that S&P going up, to keep the dollar working, to keep our banks working. I honestly think if you just look at the numbers, this is way more of a critical moment than it was back in 2008. And now, of course, you throw a real tragedy, a real difficult situation in with the corona issue. And of course, as you were mentioning, that's also a great way to cover up the GSM issue, which is becoming more and more prevalent, it's more and more impacting. So 2008 was one issue, but this is 2020 where we have an even less of a stable financial situation worldwide, and especially here in America. And they're trying to, repo market, basically give money to a middleman to keep the banks going and the financial institutions going. And I have to say, I'm optimistic. I think it'll work, but we won't be better off in the end, long run. But I'm not even sure if it's going to work. I really have kind of been watching. I keep up on the financial news. I've been watching what's going on. And I have to admit, there's an aspect of worry when it comes to the fiat world in this country because we have real issues, more so than people may know. Sure, there's the coronavirus, but there's the GSM, which is completely real. We know that's going to happen. We know that's happening, and it's in 2008. So I don't know. I am definitely glad to be in gold and silver, but also even more so crypto, because I think fiat. I don't know something. We're in a crazy world, and I'm not really sure if in another year we're going to be looking at the dollar as the world's reserve currency, especially when we have other nations that would rather it not be. How are you feeling about all this?
Well, I'm looking at the banking ratios where they need to keep reserves versus the loans. And they just also made an emergency measure where banks have to keep 0% now versus loans out versus reserve. They call it fractional reserving, where they have to keep a certain percentage back in the bank in case people like you and I would come out for our money. And it went up as high as what, 14, 16% of what they were loaning out. It's been drawn back, and now it's zero. So you have to think about that. Banks are required now because of an emergency measure. What was that, 4 days ago? What was let's go back to last. Yeah, it was Monday, 4 days ago. 0% now. So the banks have to actually keep zero in reserves, and they can loan out the rest to try to keep this facade moving forward. Well, you and I and everybody here listening is going to go eventually one day to their banking machine and get to that ATM and say, well, you know, I'm going to need some cash. I heard about somebody said keep cash on hand. Cash might be king. And then what? Because I also know some silver brokers out there, and one of them, who's a sponsor of mine on my YouTube channel, reached out and said, we still have some silver bullion, but it's $5 over spot. So then I called a few other people I know that are in the silver market, bullion market. And this is personal contacts. You either have the personal contacts already set up, like years of doing this, or you don't. There's no way. Go to APMEX, APMEX, and look on their site and see what's for sale bullion-wise. You're not going to find a scrap of an ounce of anything left. There's nothing. It always says, well, we'll notify you when it's in. You either have the personal contacts now or you don't. And for those of you who have been in the metals and set up those personal contacts through the last years, decades, however long you've been into the market on the physical metals, this is where the true network comes in. The cash cow comes in now, the people you know that can get you that physical. Because look across, there seems to be 0 ounces out there for sale. You either know your dealer personally, that you can pick up and call their personal phone number and say, I need this, or you don't. There's no in between. There's no ordering online for metals anymore. And with the banks going to zero, it makes 0 sense that they can go down to nothing in the banks for us as the public. And then they're still going to try to loan out massive amounts of money to try to keep this system flowing forward. It's criminal, actually.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that shocked me too when I heard that.
Oh, did you send me that? Really? Okay, go ahead, Craig, and then we won't talk about that image you just sent me.
Yeah, I'm getting lots of incoming here while we're talking, because people are listening and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, check this out." Well, yeah. So now the reserve is 0, which I heard about that also, and that's a new thing. At least there's always been some reserve. You had to have some of the money that you were loaning out.
Always.
Yeah, and now you need to have none. And you've got, $1 trillion. Think about that. Remember how we were all freaked out before this started? What was it, like 75 billion or so a night was going into the repo markets? And now it's $1 trillion a night is going into the repo markets. That's massive.
Yeah, so Greg, backstep that. Like 3 years ago, it was 75 billion a month. And now that's going in per night. And now that's ramping up into the 500 billion plus. Like, what is going on here? They need that much money to push in every single night. Because you have to realize, now take it back in time here. 3 years ago, it was that much per month to keep it going. Now it's that much per day in the exponential range.
Yeah, and it gets difficult to, understand how the repos work, and I am definitely a novice on it, but for the most part, it's just keeping the banks functioning. It's money they need to close the books. It's money they need to actually have money to move amongst themselves every day, and it's only that slight bit of interest that they pay back. And of course, now you've got 0, no fraction needed. Banks don't need money to back money, and basically, it's, from what I understood today, it's 500 billion twice a night, so it's $1 trillion a night. So you go from 75 billion a month to 75 billion a day to now $1 trillion a day. That's insane. And so the national debt it's just going to be insane. By the end of this year alone, in the next couple of months, it's going to be double probably what it is. It's going to be insane. So we are definitely in uncharted financial situation right now. And
Craig, could I add a thought in there? Yeah. What about the scammers in the middle who are grafting like a quarter point on that every time they're moving money in between? Like, those snakes that have set this up to graft off that of 1/4 to 1/2 point every $1 trillion move. Think how much money they're making every single move into the market and then out of the market. And as money moves around this planet. They're in the middle of every single transaction on this fiat that goes on, enriching themselves just on the movement of money, because it's 0% moving between this, there, and the other. But the fees they're charging for the interbank lenders coming in and out, it's just sickening. And the minute they get that, they're turning it into something, tangible, while you're left out in the dark holding some green paper that you can wipe your butt with instead of toilet paper.
Exactly. And that's very true, because just the repo market itself is a huge industry. It takes the middlemen, I forget what they're called because now they just redefined it. But basically, yes, the repo market itself, there's so many fees involved, and then so many, they're not a bank, but they're like the middleman, because the Fed doesn't deal with every bank. They just deal with these couple middlemen. And yeah, what they're making in transaction fees, you're right. So the repo market itself, just the money moving, is a business, and it's a big one. And you mentioned bullion, and that's the thing. I've talked to people recently who are trying to buy silver and gold, because basically I haven't followed silver as closely because it's just been too volatile, but gold definitely does appear to have found a bottom, and it appears to be in a nice fib level, as we say in trading. So gold seems like it has found a sweet spot, and it's got some stability, and we'll see it start to move up. If a person is a trader, it's the time to buy gold if they so desire. Well, people are trying to buy bullion because silver is 12 cents an ounce now, and then gold is down like 1,400 or so, and it seems like it's found
$12 an ounce. It was the 13. Let's just hit $13 even now.
Yeah, so $13. I think it hit 12. It like wicked down to 12 or something. So silver has been way down. Gold, I think, is 1,400 now or somewhere in there. I have to pull up a chart to see, but it's finding stability. So people are looking to get back into that as a safe haven, because gold dumped and silver dumped. And why did gold dump during financial uncertainty? Well, usually when traders are scared, they go to gold. But when we're talking about big like financial institutions and hedge funds and such, so bigger money, and some retail people, of course, retail trader. But when people are scared and then the big money is scared, goes to gold. When it's terrified and it is uncertain and it doesn't know what's going to happen, it goes to cash. It doesn't go to gold. And that's one of the reasons why gold was dumping. And also gold was dumping because of the cover margin calls. They had to basically keep their hedge funds and such, liquid. They had to keep the money for the people who had the accounts there and such. So a lot's been going on, but people who are trying to buy gold now and buy silver, yeah, like you were saying, they're having a hard time getting it. You might be able to go to the coin store and buy a few coins, but people who want to buy bars, people who want to buy of a couple ounces or an ounce, people who want to buy coins, yeah, it's not there. You got to wait for weeks. That is a bit unsettling to me personally.
Yeah, Craig, let me jump in here. We went up to our local silver bullion dealer here in town, because they have a nice shop up there, and they'd serve you tea, and you can just sit out and chat and watch news. They had CNBC up and on the wide screen, and you just talk, and they have a whole bunch of rounds in there, and they're closed now. They're like, we'll be back in middle of April. So even the bullion dealers in town are closing down on the physical side, where you could actually walk into their shop and say, here's my money. Give me your stuff. Give me whatever. They're totally closed. Like, are you kidding me? We're going to hold on to this night. And then we're closed because of the virus. Again, everything's because of the virus.
Yeah, it's not because of the virus. I mean, it's because of a lot of things. And I guess the virus is in part, but that is a scary thing. People can't get the bullion, and that's the craziest. I've never seen that before. So, there's a part of me that wonders, well, where did it go? Where is it? Are people buying that much of it? It's an unsettling situation, and people need to realize, when you are a retail trader and you're not a professional, you're not running a hedge fund. You're not, big into gold and silver. I mean, there's retail investors like most people, then there's the pros, and so realize that. I'm beginning to wonder, have people been tricked out of their gold and silver, basically? Because that's how it works, Dump that price, they sell it, they panic, people start selling. I mean, somebody bought it, it didn't go anywhere, it didn't disappear. Gold and silver now belongs to somebody. You know what I mean? So this is a strange time. But the nice thing about crypto that I like, and this is what I'm definitely not a financial advisor, so this is all entertainment purposes only. But what I tell people is, hey, you can't get your gold, and you can't get your silver right now. It's weeks before you get your physical asset, if you can get it at all. But with that said, what you can buy, if you so desire, is crypto. You can buy the almighty Bitcoin. And right now, we are in the midst of extreme manipulation for Bitcoin. It did dump down to like 3,400 or 3,800 for a brief bit. Now it's in the 5K range. And now, luckily, what I like to see is where Bitcoin gold is still very volatile and a bit sideways. But what we are seeing right now, if I pull it up recently, and I find this to be, very beautiful, is that we're up at 61.46 right now. So we definitely dumped along with gold and the market. But where gold is having a hard time recovering, it's just going sideways with a slight uptrend. Yeah.
Are you saying safety play here?
Yeah, I'm saying safety play because gold, see, I have it pulled up somewhere here. Yeah, gold. So gold, right at about where it's at right now, 1483. That's a place of previous support and resistance. It's also, I made a fib line way back to the last time it crossed above the daily, on the daily chart, the 200 moving average. Last time it crossed above it and started an uptrend was back in like December of 2018. So I did this long Fibonacci retracement on it. And right now it has gone back, like I say, it's got support and resistance, and it is at the .5 fib line, which I see drawn at about 1471, and it's at 1482 right now. So it looks like it's at a good place, and it's just about to cross back over the 200 moving average on the daily chart, which is definitely a good sign of strength. So I mean, right when it crosses about 1500, which is where the 200 moving average is right now, we'll probably see it take off. So gold as a safe play, as a safe haven, even though it definitely dumped, it looks like now is when the smart gold buyers are going to start just buying it. And like you're saying, now you can't get it if you want the physical asset. Oh,
but you think it'll dump further, though? I mean, everybody's looking in for this, piranha type move when it hits that bottom. But do you think we're there yet? Because the physical resetters, if you will, the fiat resetters, we're coming into a time where there's going to be, I don't think we've really seen the actual collapse yet of the fiat system, which needs to occur to reset to the new system. And, the reason we keep talking about all of these things is the fingerprint of this grand solar minimum that wipes out crops globally where there's not enough food is economic collapse, like we've seen all the last 5 grand solar minimums, massive population migration where they're moving either for economic prosperity or they move to a different place because it's warmer where they can actually eat because there's food that grows there. And we see these same things again and again in this economic reset every single time of what's termed in value of commodities or land or whatever it is for that time for the value. We keep seeing it again and again and again and again and again. And here we are again. And at the grand solar minimum here is again.
Yeah, are we at bottom? It's hard to tell at bottom with gold and with silver. I mean, we're in such a volatile situation. Things could get worse.
Is waiting.
Yeah, it's hard. It all depends on how much global instability we have and how much fear there is in the market. If there's fear, people will go to gold. If there's panic, they go out of gold to fiat, And that's kind of what happened to Bitcoin. But one thing about Bitcoin and crypto, I'll just talk about just Bitcoin and Ethereum, but Bitcoin, it's still a market cap of only a couple $100 billion. And so big money can play it. They can manipulate it. And that's fine. But when we look at when it dumped, when the market started dumping, it basically had two different days that it dumped. And it was within like literally a minute that it lost all of its, that it dumped. And then oftentimes it would pump for a moment afterwards. So what you have is you have the big money knocking out your longs and then killing your shorts. So basically, they're basically freeing up Bitcoin by doing that, and then they're buying it slowly. So we had a dump we were doing well in Bitcoin around like we were riding about 9,000 or so. Then we dumped down to like 8,000, then quickly to 5,900. Then we rode about 5,200. Well, we had a quick dump to like 3,200 or so, or 34. Then we went sideways. We had a pump after that. Then we went sideways for quite a while at around like 5,100, and now we just had a pump up to like 6,300, and now we're finding support and riding that. So it does seem like Bitcoin's making a bit of a quicker recovery than gold, and it's a way more fluid asset because gold, you got to buy gold, you got to go find it, you got to find silver, you got to buy it. That's hard right now. But with crypto, you can buy a Bitcoin if you want. You can buy Bitcoin today. And so, yeah, it's a tough one. Are we at the bottom? Are we going to see more? Here's the thing is when fiat dumps, when the market dumps and fiat loses power, especially when you're dumping $1 trillion a night to keep the banks functioning, to keep the market functioning, at a certain point, sound money, gold, silver, Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin is sound money, have got to find their bottom and at least stay sideways or begin to trend up strongly against the dollar. And so we're just now seeing that to a point where I have some confidence for Bitcoin and gold actually gaining strength and value against the dollar. So is that going to continue? Oh, I hope so. But you're right. It kind of depends on what disasters befall us next. So how are you playing the crypto game right now?
Well, no, I'm looking at the market makers that are sitting over in Chiang Mai and wondering how much of an influence these guys are having, because even before, think about going back into 2017, 18, these guys are all chilling out over in Thailand. You know, there's a group of them, market makers are trying to push everything every day. So is it now these market makers that were independents trying to now team with banks that are doing this in conjunction, or is it independent market makers trying to move this and scrape a couple? I'm maybe gonna say thousands now, because every time we're looking at it, like you mentioned, went from 9 to 8 to down to 3. So imagine if you're pushing the markets. Some of these guys are having 100,000 Bitcoin, 10,000 Bitcoin, 50,000 Bitcoin coming in as groups, going, all right, we're going to move 750,000 Bitcoin today, and we're going to try to move the market in this way or another. And there's no insider trading collaboration laws against that. So you get somebody out there pushing 1 million Bitcoin a day, where there's a group of them saying, all right, we're going to make it drop, we're going to make it rise. And it goes from 9 grand down to 3, and then back up again. Well, what kind of money are these people making? And where does it draw? If you're making $1 million a day, just like 2 telephone calls in the morning and a press of a button, I mean, that's a lot of, carrot to draw in front of a cart for a lot of people to take advantage of. So is it organically coming this way, or is it manipulated this way? Because with the reset, when you were talking about the people skedaddling out of there and having to sell on margin call for, they had to liquidate anything they could to get that capital to bring it back in on the margin call, fine. But they're selling the Krugerrands, whatever they can get out of it, anything to get cash or paper gold or whatever. There seems to be a decoupling now, paper gold and physical. But where is the metal going? Because nobody can find it. It's very rare. Unless you know a broker, you're not getting it. It's impossible to find on the market. So it like liquidates in a second off fiat, and then it's instantly scooped up somewhere in physical. But if you're going to reset an entire monetary system, you're going to need to go to what you're talking about, crypto. You're going to need to head to the metals, and you're going to have to get some special drawing rights. Like when all fiats collapse, the international monetary funds, I mark my words, 6 months. No, I'm going to give myself a little leeway. I'm going to be generous with myself here. A year from now, let's call this, mark it on the date here, March 20th, 2021. The International Monetary Fund between this year will introduce some sort of legislation, some sort of idea, some sort of drip feeding of narrative to get you to accept that a new special drawing rights currency based on a basket of currencies that will never fail again because they're all equally weighted will be distributed to the public to accept in the public square, something like this. And that's where I'm going to go with the whole crypto is going to be a part of the monetary reset, as well as metals and the SDR.
Hopefully, yeah. And when that UN dollar comes, hopefully we will have, crypto as still a decentralized, sound money system. I mean, my hope is that Bitcoin is adopted enough. I mean, of course, we know that Bitcoin is not private. There are private coins like Monero and Grin and things like that, but they're kind of obscure. Most people don't know about that. So when you look at Bitcoin itself, if enough people adopt it, if it's used enough, I hope that it will stay a currency regardless of what you could call like the New World Order currency desires to happen. So we'll see. That's my hope, is that, like I say, it's all about adoption. It's all about people using it. It isn't really owned by anybody. I know some people say the government can't stop it or governments can't stop it. And I'd say, yeah, they can. At least in a country they can. But I don't know. We shall see. I do believe, at least at this time in history, I think that Bitcoin, as I often say in my little update that I do every morning, where I say, welcome home, Bitcoin truth seekers. And I always like to mention at the end, it's the peaceful revolution. I'm glad everybody's there and that it matters, And I do think that, yeah, Bitcoin could be destroyed by the empire. It could be removed from the earth. It could. People kid themselves who don't think that it could. But I think it at this moment is our best. I think one of the best things an individual can do, one of the most powerful things they can do for a global peaceful revolution and getting through coronaviruses and getting through totalitarian governments and getting through GSM, Grand Solo Minimum, getting through all the challenges that we have, really the peaceful revolution to make all this become kind of a harmony and a better humanity in the future by Bitcoin. I know it sounds crazy, but I've given it a lot of thought. I trade every day. And really, the peaceful revolution, I mean, people often say, what can I do? What can I do, to make the world a better place? Well, be nice and buy Bitcoin. And make sure that old person at the store who can't find potatoes gets some. Take care of your neighbors. Buy Bitcoin, be kind, take care of your neighbors, and it'll be a better world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you need to think about with this, they're already tailing back Netflix on the streaming. And over the last year, we've seen an enormous amount of internet outages across the US. Do you think they could take down the entire world internet just for that fraction of a second to reset everything and make a fraction of things disappear off the net and then reset it as such? But how many people out there have private servers that could still stay on, that have their own power source, that are disconnected and, firewalled off and, air gapped, that could bring it back online again? Would it be outside of the scope of me to think that as this entire currency reset goes on, that they're going to need to make an enormous amount of things disappear digitally? That the entire internet for a fraction of a second on the planet, you wouldn't even notice it. You wouldn't even notice it. It would be off for a quarter of a second, and then it would come back on, and there might be I need to reload my browser. But during that quarter of a second interrupt, the entire world's internet went offline, and a reset occurred. Am I fantasy thinking this, or am I too far out of bounds with my conjecture here?
No, I think what the version that I could see happening is simply well, right now we're seeing the power that the government wants to have, or governments want to have, and I've been focusing, mainly on the U.S. government because that's where I live. But emergency powers, and they want to use their emergency powers now to get away with things they couldn't before. And so, how can you manipulate the internet via emergency powers? And especially when one of the things that I have been really uncertain about really is the whole Netflix being throttled down 25% because of the internet traffic. I don't really buy it. I would say that no, I don't think so. I think it's just a test. This is just conjecture, everybody, but I believe that it's just a test to measure that Netflix can do it. Internet outages, I think it's just a test to ensure that they can cause an outage, But really, all you need to do is turn off several big routers, really network interfaces that connect the different carriers. The internet is not impervious. I know that was the idea when the Department of Defense, made it back in the day, that it would have no single point of failure, but it does. It has a couple. And that's the thing. So it can be turned off, and it can be, falsely manipulated and such like that. And so, when you mentioned if the internet kind of went offline and came back online as a different internet, or reboot it, you could say, well, it's like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is thousands, if not way more, tens of thousands. I'm not sure how many nodes that actually make it work, and you'd have to kill every single one of them to get rid of Bitcoin. So, how would you do that? Well, ultimately, even though it's challenging, it's all about emergency powers. All the government has to do really is say, you know what, terrorists are using Bitcoin, so we have to make it not work. Easy, filter the ports. It's easy. Bitcoin could be offline in a matter of with coordination across the earth, like in a matter of days. Really, you know what I mean? So there's, especially when you have emergency powers, because our government gets away with anything it wants. All it has to do is just say terrorists use it. I mean, we actually had that guy Mencken or Mukin, I forget his name. The guy, he's up there with Trump a lot. You'll see talking to the nation in these recent, I think, Corona updates.
Mucus.
Yeah, Mucin. Yeah, I forget even his role in things. But man, there ever was a man who can just lie. He'll sit there and say that, cryptocurrency is used for all kinds of crime. That's why we have to regulate it. And we can't let it exist. And people will say, what about fiat? And they'll say, oh, it's never used for that. People are like, are you serious? And he's like, yes, it's never used for crime. It's insane. So yeah, I would say in our insane world, really, people oftentimes think that they can drive through roadblocks when there's a quarantine, and you won't be able to, and the idea that cryptocurrencies are like Bitcoin could not be offline tomorrow. Of course it could. Certainly could. So, but something I saw while we've been chatting that we noticed is, well, before I say that, but I don't think they're going to take it offline. I don't think they really can. I think it'd be very, very difficult. And also, the more we use it, the more people who buy into that peaceful revolution and they use crypto, especially Bitcoin, also Ethereum, if you've heard of it, the more we use it, the more we're a part of that peaceful revolution, the more we understand it, then ultimately that's the less ability that the governments have to actually manipulate it. And so as the fiat currency does go away, as we have all these financial problems, as the GSM, as we go into this new time, we have the corona issues and things like that. As we have these markets crashing, we can see these financial disasters happening. Really, my way of protecting my wealth is gold and Bitcoin. And like I say, Bitcoin matters. Peaceful revolution, I think that it's not a perfect situation, but it is the first thing I've ever seen in my life that I could actually do that I felt was completely good. Peaceful revolution, invest in Bitcoin, make money, make the world a better place. Nothing is perfect, but I think it's the best shot humanity's ever had to not be controlled by central entities like fascist governments. So, with that said, we did just notice on Amazon that Amazon Pantry, the Amazon Fresh, Amazon Pantry, I believe it's called. If everybody goes to Amazon and click on Fresh, if you go over there, it says pantry is temporarily closed. We're busy restocking. It looks like Amazon Fresh is not working. It's restocking. Whoa. Now that's like the shoelaces that I saw the other day. That just kind of shocked me. Are you seeing that?
The world's largest vegetable and fruit retailer has run out of supply, is what that says to me.
It's big. That's big.
Yeah, that's like Walmart saying, we've run out of everything that you can eat in our store. That's fresh vegetable.
And shoelaces and canning jars. We're out.
And the lids too. Okay, the canning jars, for those of you out there, I'm gonna go into it here for a second. All right. If you have the canning jars, if you have the mason jars, like your grandma's got a bunch of the old jars in the basement and they don't have lids on them, you need the lids to store stuff. And the rings that come on there where you tighten the lid down, you don't need to leave those on the jars after you can it. Once it makes the seal and goes and it locks down that seal, you can take that ring off of it and use it on another lid to tighten it down during the canning process. So if you have jars, you don't need, like, let's say you have 600 jars, you need 600 lids, but you don't need 600 rings. You need like 12 rings or something, and you can do an enormous amount of batches with those rings. And the rings are the ones that tighten the lid onto the jar while you put it in the hot boiling water for however long, whatever you have in there. It could be 10 minutes for veggies or much longer for meat, depending on what you have. And then once it dry or cools in the morning, and then the seals, you can just take the ring off and then use it for another batch of stuff. So think about that moving forward with whatever you're going to move. But this whole thing about the fresh vegetables disappearing is kind of a, Spain had an enormous amount of cold damage this year. So they lost almost all the supply across Europe and to the UK for the third year in a row. Like Almeria, this is a part in southern Spain. If you look at Almeria, go to Spain, it's in the south and to the east on the coast there. It is an area of hundreds of how many acres? Like almost a million acres of greenhouses. I'm trying to convert to hectares to greenhouses. It's about 1 million acres of greenhouses. And they were so cold damaged that the fruit and the vegetables and the berries grown in these greenhouses were so damaged by cold this year in the greenhouses that they lost production. So think about that. It's in a greenhouse, but they didn't layer them for cold to try to get. So for those of you who are understanding about just the basics of greenhouses and hoop houses and things, if you put the second layer of plastic in there, it acts as a buffer so you can get an extra season or an extra couple weeks out of it. So each layer that you put inside will give you an extra 2 weeks approximately. Now it's approximate. But with their single layering that they've had on all these greenhouses in Spain that have worked for so many generations, for over 100 years now, these last couple of years, the single poly sheet over the greenhouses is not enough to insulate the plants anymore. So they're actually dying in the greenhouses from the cold. So I would imagine in short order, the Spanish growers are going to put a second layer inside there. But think about that. They lost everything this year as well. So there's massive shortages from veg. And I did just a video yesterday talking about, here's another thing that's not being considered. An enormous amount of containers are always sent to China to reload and then send back to the rest of the world. Well, when the virus first took place in Wuhan, China totally locked its ports. So everything inbound came back in. China was loading, but they never sent out. So what's happening now is this enormous amount of container build inside China where there's no outbound. So imagine every single ship on the planet going back to China to refill, but when it arrived and there's no outbound. But every single ship that was scheduled to leave China never left China. So now China has pretty much 90% of the world's containers. And that includes the refrigerator containers, otherwise known as a reefer, where they put meat and seafood and vegetables and fruits and that kind of stuff in refrigerated containers. So the skyrocketing prices for shipping now. And then here's another thing, air cargo. Every single air flight, they're charging you $20, $30 a bag to put your bag on a flight, whatever airline you move through. There's 10 tons, 20,000 pounds of cargo on a regular commercial flight that's going trans-Pacific or transatlantic. 20,000 pounds is cargo on a discount rate from shippers shipping lobsters, fruits, vegetables to other parts of the world. That's all stopped. There's 75% reduction in global flights at the moment. So the amount of fruits and veg moving through refrigerated containers and these kind of things that stay in their nitrogen fixed, not able to ripen state in the 30-day voyage, they jack a lot of, if you don't know anything about fruit and vegetable movement across the planet, this might be new to you, but they pick them a little bit unripe, and then they fill the entire container with nitrogen, so there's no ripening at all. And then when it hits port, they open the container, all the nitrogen rolls out, and then they bring it to your store, and then it starts to ripen naturally. So the entire fruit and vegetable distribution channels across our planet has been disrupted completely to the point where there's not enough containers to give us even meat or seafood left in the refrigerated containers. And those are the high value. So if you're a business, you have to think about the most valuable targets for your business and shipping. People are going to move to seafood and meat first because the highest value is the highest turnover. Your little vegetable lettuce, that doesn't count anymore. That is so far down the chain of getting delivered. Spinach, yeah, right. So think about that. Every container on the planet is pretty much in China right now. So they swoop back all the containers too. So the thumb screw advantage that China has on manufacturing globally, and now the entire world's containers to ship stuff that we need is in Chinese control. So I could see why this whole Amazon can't ship anything anymore. They've run out of supply, like so many other companies across the planet. If you can't grow it from this point forward, or you don't have the seeds, you're not going to get fresh vegetables any longer. So I encourage you to learn how to grow microgreens, learn how to order from different seed companies to get microgreens, or you're not going to eat fresh vegetables as long as you live again.
It's true, and you can see that, like right now, I think we're very lucky in that sometimes you get to experience a disaster without yourself being injured or anyone else. Just you get lucky, you know. You have a head-on collision and you don't get injured. You know, sometimes we get lucky, and I think right now with this event we're having right now with the CoronaCon is what I like to call it. We could say preppers get a chance to actually get into gear, and right now this is a great time to look at your provisions, look at how you're planning to live later on. Adapt 2030, you know, in 2030 as we move towards that. Maybe it's happening a little bit sooner than we thought, but you still have this beautiful grace period where anywhere in your preps and your preparations and your growing, especially of hydroponics and microgreens and in the ground if you're able to do that, in your hoop houses, in your cold frames, in your greenhouse, now's where you can put it to practice, because really here in Arizona, in the desert, if we weren't hydroponicking right now and microgreening, there's no lettuce in the stores. You know, it's very, very limited. So we're like actually, you know, we're living now as we plan to more in the future. And so this is a great little bit of grace that we're all getting to make sure we have everything lined up. Well, something that I've been thinking is the asleep are terrified of a virus. You know, you might say like the consensus reality is afraid of a virus, and I think everybody has it on their minds. But what I think a lot of people are truly terrified is their governments right now, because we look at them and we go, oh my gosh, you know, what do they always do? Patriot Act 2.0, the Corona version, whatever. We already see it happening, and it's very, very close. We're seeing, I mean, during 9/11, you didn't have the governor of California saying everybody shelter in place. So this is a new extreme. And here's what I wanted to mention to you. The U.S. wants to track your phone's location data to help limit the spread of coronavirus. We've probably all seen that headline a couple times recently. Now, I mean, I read into it and I looked into it, and I can't find exactly specifically what they want to do, but the story is being floated out there, and it does appear that
I've
it is
experienced
the
this
case.
twice, Craig. I can tell you exactly what they want to do. Can I explain?
Tell me what's going on. Yeah.
Okay, so in China, so those of you listening, I used to live in Taipei, Taiwan. And then I saw all this happening in China, and I decided to come back to the States here. It's been 5 weeks now. So I self-quarantined myself when I first came back for 3 weeks. I've been out in public again for a couple weeks. Totally fine, nothing wrong. And what they'd done in both places, and this is both places, both Taiwan and China both, and Singapore and Hong Kong. So I'm going to give you 4 locations exactly what happened when they talk about this phone thing. So most people leave the location tracker on your phone on. So many people have apps that says leave the location tracker, whatever. There's a backdoor for the government to find out where your location is. Fine. We've all agreed to that. You've agreed to it. Maybe I haven't. But if there's a person who they have found, so the reason it started is in China, people just fell to the ground and started shaking and then died. So what they did was find anybody's phone who was around the infected person through GPS, and then they would find the name because your SIM card is associated with your name. And what they would do is echolocate around that dead person that died in the shopping mall or on the street or wherever they were. And then they would find the periphery people within like 50 or 100 feet and then track those people down and actually send people or quarantine teams to the homes of those that were near those that had died on the street and then quarantine them as well. Same thing. And here's the scariest thing. So in Taiwan, this is a firsthand account, there was a girl from Indonesia who came in who was infected with the coronavirus. She didn't know she was infected at first, and she kind of got sick about the second or third day in Taiwan. And she's like, oh, just a flu or whatever. I'm sick, whatever. I want to go travel. So they found her data in the phone because she bought one of the temporary SIM cards. They had images of her on the cameras because a lot of these countries like China, Taiwan, America, many places in Europe have cameras. Every MRT station or subway station, bus stops, taxis have the cameras. They knew exactly where she went step for step during her entire journey. And here's the scariest thing. They knew where she went, but based on her location where she went, they found everybody's location off the phone within a 100-foot radius of her where she went on trains, the MRT station, the markets, and all this stuff. And that's exactly how they're trying to track you right now. So what you're talking about is the exact same thing I want to do here. So let's say you get sick, Craig, and I'm right next to you, and they have my identity on my phone, and they know who I am and where my location is. If you pop and ping as a suspected or a confirmed coronavirus case, I'm near you, and they're just going to come and find my phone and go, oh, David's phone was right next to you, so we're going to go to his house. This is exactly what's happened in 4 different countries. I've seen it firsthand. So this is how they're using that tech to track down people who are confirmed or died on the street, and then they're going to just walk into your home and grab you and take you out.
Now it sounds about right for sure. Because something that we've been seeing here in this country recently is where there'll be some kind of a crime committed, and this sounds very, very unsettling to me. There's some kind of a crime committed. Well, then in coordination with ultimately the cell phone providers, they'll look at a grid of that area and who was there via cell phones. And the thing is that now you're not really an innocent person walking down the street. There was a house burglarized and you were walking by. You were walking your dog. You know what I mean? And of course, the person who broke into the house, they didn't have a cell phone on them because they're savvy. The next thing you know, the cops are knocking at your door. And so I've been watching it. I've been seeing stories of stuff like this. And myself, I've gotten back to carrying my cell phone in you can turn it off, but that doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't trust turning it off only. Have it in a Wi-Fi proof bag, which is, you can get them, they're called like 030 or something like that. Amazing, like military grade protection. You put your laptop or your phone in there and nothing's going to talk to it. And it's not going to talk to anything. And it's a strange world where you start thinking, man, I just want to have a landline again. And, just because you start to see the liability of carrying your cell phone because it offers so much to have a smartphone. But when you see them so used against the people, I know people can make a lot of arguments why it's a positive thing, but myself, I will just put it in a bag where it's offline when I travel, when I'm moving around, and I'll pull it out if I need it, I guess. I mean, and also with that, cell phone protocol, take care of yourselves, people, watch out, those things are getting more and more dangerous by the day. Are you sheltering in place? I know we weren't going to talk about the coronavirus much, but it comes up now and then, and some might ask, are you sheltering in place? Because at this point, I kind of am. I'm just going out to get essentials now and then, and I'm just watching very, very vigilantly because, whatever the corona is, it does exist, and I'm ready to shelter in place. How about you? Are you still out and about, or are you staying hunkered down?
Well, I haven't been out in 3 days here, but we have a pretty large, yard in the back there, 2 acres, and a little bit in the front. I'm working online here because the YouTube channel Adapt 2030, doing the podcast tonight with yourself. And, I'm with some family. So we have, breaks together if I'm not working, cooking. And I haven't thought about making bread again or making cakes again or making pies. But, in the last few days, I've gotten back to making dough again. Like when we were kids, we'd always help out, crack the egg and do everything, get the egg yolk out of there. And it's been like that again. It's, a more pioneer lifestyle where you're back with family, and it's just a completely different environment. In the beginning, everybody was trying to jostle for their space, but everybody's settled in now, and my hours are different than everybody else is staying up late. It's all good. And the only time I go out is in the early morning hours to try to get there before everybody else and just get some essentials. And it depends. Like, again, going to a home gardening center, nobody's there. They're all at the grocery stores. I'm looking for planting seeds, planting potatoes, whatever it is, shallots, garlic, different kind of whatever planting bulbs I could get that are food. And I'm at a gardening or some kind of Home Depot center, not even Home Depot, but Mayo or some kind of place like this where there's not so many crowds, but I'm getting value product that I can keep myself safe and continue to grow food. Seed centers, going off to, co-ops, like a seed co-op. They're out in the countryside. Nobody's there. There's a couple guys who are animal husbandry. They got goats, they got cows, they got pigs, whatever. But there's very few people there. They're all at the grocery stores buying toilet paper when the comet's coming in,
Yeah. Well, the toilet paper, I do truly believe that was a psyop. I'm going to call that one a psyop, in my opinion. That was definitely some kind of a planned event. I really think that who knows what kind of programming was going on, but I really think that was a measurement. That was a test to how much people can be manipulated, how a thought and action can be put in their head. And that toilet paper, that will be the great toilet paper psyop, the butt wipe psyop of 2020, because I think that was measured, because it didn't make sense. It seemed so weird. And so everybody who stocked up on massive amounts of toilet paper, well, you've been counted. They know who you are, and they know that it worked. Well, definitely with this whole quarantine of 2020 that we all will live through, then we'll get back to other things like the grand solar minimum and such like that. But this really is a time where I think this may backfire. The desire to control, to pass new laws, to have, Patriot Act 3.0 or whatever. This may backfire because something that I'm seeing is people are being good to each other, kind to each other. There's more of a community in the last couple of days where I live than there's ever been in the last couple of years that I've lived here. While you're in quarantine, work on your body, your mind, your spirit. Be kind to your community. Take care of your elders, your young, your neighbors. Get back into your hobbies. Go play guitar. Go paint those military figures, garden, live a better life, get back to growing your own food, your hydroponics. Also, if you're home and you can't get into the office, you're working from home, or if your job went away, work on a new way of making money from your home, So really, I think this may very well lead to something that backfires so much on the globalists who want to gain more control during this time, where we're going to find a renaissance of a better humanity during this period, because we were all stuck at home without all the noise and distractions, and we had to focus on what mattered. So other than that, go to radiantcreators.com and check out what we do.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. You've had so many good guests on your shows. So how do people find you anyway? Give us some leads into your social media here.
Well, you can always just start at radiantcreators.com. You go there, it's all there. Of course, all the shows are on YouTube. They're on BitChute. They're on Brighteon. If you go to YouTube or any of those and just search for Radiant Creators, 2 words, we're there, you'll find us. And of course, we're on Twitter, look for Radiant Creators, but you can find all of our social media at radiantcreators.com. It's all there.
Excellent. And while you're planting your seeds in the backyard, and I would suggest microgreens for a skill set moving forward. If you can learn how to grow microgreens to 4 to 5 inches tall, your neighbors will love you and they will trade you anything for that, because we've already noticed that lettuces and all these kind of green veggies are disappearing. If you don't have the skill and the seeds to grow microgreens, that's a trade. That's going to be a trade. Silver's one thing, an ounce of silver, 10-ounce bar, 5-ounce bar, whatever. But food that's edible, that can give people micronutrients and vegetables, that's a completely different thing. Priceless. So anyway, thank you for listening tonight. I'm David DuByne, your host here at Mini Ice Age Conversations on a Revolution Radio Studio A. Every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, if I could speak. And tonight we've been with Craig Simpson from Radiant Creators as well. So thanks for listening. I hope this helped you kind of get away from the madness to understand there's some greatness in all of these changes here. And, you can get back to your news feed tomorrow, but we were trying to bring you something a little different on ways to think about moving forward and ways to think about keeping yourself safe, mentally safe, physically safe, and spiritually safe, as well as your families. So Grand Solar Men prepared, and make sure you join Craig's feed. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye for now.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.